All right, let's do some division previews. We're talking NFC East today. Why? Because we can, and because hey, Dallas and the Eagles start on Thursday. And oh yeah, Dallas had some news over the weekend. Dear God, I get that people might be a little concerned about Dallas now. So we'll talk about the NFC East. We won't talk as much about Washington and the Giants because I did videos directly on their kind of situation and what they did in the offseason and addressing a little bit of that. Although a little bit of updates I think shall be included, including my feelings on the Jackson Dart gameplay from the preseason, as well as Terry McLaurin getting his extension. So we will touch on those. But let's dive right into it. We'll start with the Eagles, the number one of last year, the Super Bowl champions of the world, or at least of the NFL. Because there's no international NFL leagues, I don't think. So, we'll go. I digress. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit of Eagles. They are dealing with some change-ups, right? They lose Milton Williams. They get rid of some older corners, like they move on from Darius Slay. They're getting younger on the defense. I like this maneuver. They did retain their linebacker, so I'm not I kind of like what they've been doing. We know that they play on Thursday and they play the Cowboys. The one concern I have with that game going into it, and I will do a weekly preview of the games as well on Thursday, but just addressing it right now in this episode because this is going to be the first thing to release this week. I do have some concerns about Landon Dickerson's health. That's my main concern right now for them. But so far, it sounds like other than that, they'll be a little bit healthy. They did lose, Mekhi Becton left to go be with the Chargers. Oh, Mekhi. So yeah, they now have a change up on right guard. It looks like Steen I have to find out who's picking who's going to be where on the depth chart. But it sounds like Steen's going to be the starting guard right now. I could be entirely wrong. Landon Dickerson though at left guard again dealing with an injury. We'll see if he's going to be playing Thursday or not. I've heard different reports. Edge rush stuff. Let's see what else I got going on here. Bond was the guy who they brought back because he played really well. That was the linebacker I was talking about before. That was one of their priority retained players, which is interesting because, again, they lost Milton Williams, but they had a lot of D linemen. They've constantly kept churning the butter at D linemen, multiple first-round picks with Carter. And, I do like what they have as far as edge rush and D line. And then they also had a retirement as well with Brendan Graham. So defensively, a lot younger than they were. They have Keontae Mitchell at corner. They have Cooper DeJean kind of playing corner, slot corner kind of situation there. I like everything with the Eagles. I think they have a chance to repeat. They also lost Kellen Moore, their offensive coordinator in free agency. We've seen this story before when they lost Shane Steichen and they weren't able to recover from that right away, and they had kind of a down season after they lost Steichen. So I'm a little concerned about that. They aren't losing two coordinators, which is a good thing. They still have Vic Fangio there as the DC. So I think the defense will still see some consistency there because I think a lot of the older players that they did lose, other than Milton Williams, I think he was a key cog in that defensive line, especially because he was part of a rotation and was kept very fresh. But I think the rest of that defense, I feel like, is actually just getting younger and better by keeping Bond, by having a year two of Cooper DeJean and year two of Keontae Mitchell and Rodrigo Blankenship there. I think I like that defense. Offensively, might have more concerns than nothing, but losing Mekhi Becton, I don't know if he was really a driver of that. Like, again, I think he played pretty well. I think he got coached up pretty well. But again, this is also a team that seems to pump out like their fifth best offensive lineman always seems to step up because of the coaching there. So what about the rest though, right? Because again, they have two very good tackles in Lane Johnson and Mailata. There was discussion about getting rid of Goddard, right? They were going to trade him away, then it didn't work out that well. They traded for John Mechie after they signed Harrison Bryant in free agency, traded him away and got Mechie into the building on last year, his deal from the Houston Texans. They still have Jahan Dotson from last year. I was curious about whether the Mechie Dotson situation would be where that might treat, where they go with everything. I like how Howie Roseman runs things. He's probably my favorite GM in the NFL. I think he's just always very forward-thinking, very structurally interesting on the contracts, and just constantly trying to churn the butter on the talent and always trying to take shots at guys and constantly just trying to shift things around, try to play with what they got. They still have Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown, and I think those are still going to be the top two billers at wide receiver, obviously. But it does feel like there's always a little ding up here or there. Are they going to run more? Are they going to, is their run rate going to be like it's going to be last year with Saquon? I think that was kind of things working out a very specific way last year. And again, the team being relatively healthy as well. And I mean, Saquon's still going to be Saquon. I think he's still going to be good as a player, so I still have high hopes for them. And they're still my number one team to take this division. I think they're the favorites. I don't think anybody else doesn't have them as the favorite for the NFC East. Although the number two team in this division, you might not who and I know everybody goes, well, nobody wins this division back-to-back years, and injuries happen and things shift up. I think you might have had the Dallas Cowboys as a dark horse for this division at one point. I'm going to talk about them first before I touch on Washington. So my Commanders fans, hang on. But I'm going to talk about Dallas because obviously there's the big news. Dallas traded away Micha Parsons for 2 first-round picks and a Kenny Clark. Kenny Clark D-tackle from the Green Bay Packers because that's where they traded. Micha Parsons, too, is the Green Bay Packers. How do we feel about this? Yikes. Yikes, I think, would be the right answer. Yikes, Ruzi. I have concerns, obviously, as does the whole world. Is there a good way of articulating this for them? Is there a good way of trading away a 26-year-old elite pass rusher for 2 first-round picks? They got less than what the Chargers got for Khalil Mack, or not the Chargers, the Raiders got for Khalil Mack. I forgot because the Chargers now currently have Khalil Mack. But yes, originally, remember, the Raiders had Khalil Mack and traded him to the Bears. This is less. This is cheaper. This is 2 first-round picks and an aging D-tackle. Apparently, Jerry Jones said that they only called teams that had D-tackles. Way to limit your market, Jerry. You don't think it's way easier to find a D-tackle than an elite edge rusher. I don't know if you know that. Now, again, I think that there might be some way of salvaging this defense to be a mid-defense. But, man, missing Micha Parsons is going to be huge, and you have to replace that. Now, I am a big fan of Donovan Ezeraku, who they drafted this year in the second round. I think he was a very solid edge rusher. So I have so many concerns. I think everybody has concerns. Their defense was not good last year. It really wasn't good when they didn't have Micha Parsons, and he freed things up for everybody else, made a lot of people look good. You know, they have Deron Bland, who I think they just extended now, and Trevon Diggs, who has not been exactly the healthiest Diggs of the world. And I mean, there are 2 Diggs in the NFL who play pretty well at their positions, but Trevon Diggs, again, not always been healthy. Had some good years though, so I'm like, again, both those players are really good, but you need health around them. And like, again, not having an elite edge rusher at the front end of this defense might be an issue. But let's touch back again that Micha Parsons. Dude, what are you doing? What are you doing? I don't get it. Like, let's not even touch on the fact that you aggravated your own elite edge rusher by keeping his agent out of the discussion. I'm pretty sure that, like, there's a pretty strong argument that if Jerry Jones didn't try to, like, cut the agent out of it, that maybe this wouldn't have happened. And you got to remember, these are negotiations, and everything comes involved in this. It's not like, oh, well, we have these, he agreed to these numbers. He can figure out the rest. His agent can figure out the rest. No, that's not how that works, buddy, because the numbers that are negotiated also get tied into clauses in the contract, like, void clauses, things like that. Like, hey, what about if he's punished by the NFL, he gets suspended by the NFL? What if you decide to punish him randomly for some particular reason or another? Is it the team that gets to punish him, and who gets to decide that? Again, these are negotiated contracts. There's also the pay schedules, all these different things. The amounts matter, but it's not the only thing that matters in these contracts. And by taking away that leverage, you're really hurting the player. And you saw what Parsons got at the end of the day was a $47 million a year contract. He got some legit money on this contract. Listen, Packers, we'll talk Packers a little bit on the NFC West preview, but listen, you got to look at this going like, hey, man, This was some money. He got buku money. He got the dang buku money, and rightfully so. Dallas. Let's not even talk about how Jerry has mishandled that situation. I'm a big fan of Dak Prescott, right? I think he's an okay. I think he's in the solid QB range of QB 7 to QB 15, right? Like, I think there's like 3 tiers or 2. I think there's essentially like 3 or 4 tiers of QB. There is elite franchise QB. Then there is the like next tier down of like the top 5 to 6 guys who you're like, oh, these guys are just different. And like maybe Jaden Daniels is one of those guys. This isn't, I'm not talking fantasy wise, by the way. But again, like we're talking about the Joe Burrows, the Josh Allens, those guys. And like that exists. Then there is a tier though of like QB 7 to QB 15 where it's like these guys, you put everything right around them. You put the right offense around them, like the Baker Mayfields of the world. And it doesn't even mean that they don't even have the ceiling of moving beyond QB 7, but that they are good. And then sometimes like, okay, if too much is going on, you could break them. I think Prescott's one of those QBs that you want. You definitely want them as your QB as an NFL team because he's like his ceiling is QB 5, QB 6, maybe QB 1 for a season or so. But like generally speaking, the average will average out to somewhere in the QB 7 to QB 15 range over a period of several years. So not the Josh Allens of the world, which end up being in the top 5 every year for discussion, but, consistently in the negotiated room. I like the idea that they added George Pickens to this receiver room. And honestly, I think this team was a dark horse candidate to upset the Eagles going into the season when they had Micha Parsons. I think it was true. Like, I think there was a legit argument that this team was pretty dangerous. And now you lose Parsons. That was an elite edge rusher on your defense. It's such a key cog in all of it. And then you look at the offense, and like maybe they'll be able to keep up in games, but there were questions on their offensive line. Like, you have to see a step forward from Tyler Guyton, their first-round pick from last year. You have to hope Tyler Booker takes at the role running, and as a guard you drafted in the top 15 this year in the draft. You have to hope that the health ends up being better for Prescott and a lot of these players. But their 1-2 punch at receiver is really good with CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, and I thought that was always going to be the case going in after they made that trade. I thought this was a good match for Pickens. Now, how quickly does he burn himself out like Amari Cooper burnt out there? I have no idea. Or how every other Steelers receiver who's been traded from the Steelers has panned out. No idea. I digress. I think on paper, the offense looked like it could be semi-exciting. They didn't really address running back once again. I mean, like Jaden Blue, maybe there's an opportunity there for him to be electric. But it sounds like the starter right now is Javonte Williams. We're in the late stage Javonte Williams career arc. Ever since he had that injury, it just hasn't really been what we saw his rookie year. Miles Sanders is there. He really hasn't ever been more than Miles Sanders of what we saw with the Eagles. I don't know if there's more ceiling there beyond that. So, I don't know. I think Dallas went from being maybe like a dark horse candidate to win this division and maybe make it pretty far into the playoffs to being a team that, yeah, they'll eke out some wins here or there because I don't think the defense is going to be terrible. Like especially Kenny Clark. Maybe between Kenny Clark, Mozzie Smith, and Osa Odigizua, the interior of that defensive line could actually be pretty solid. But I don't think they're going to replace in the aggregate all the things that they got from having Micha Parsons because Micha Parsons was such an intricate piece of that defense. I digress. The rest of that defense, the back end is kind of like Malik Hooker again. Like I'm glad he's finally seemed to build up somewhat of a job and somewhat of a role. Again, we thought he was going to end up being like I think a lot of people when he came out thought he was going to be the next Ed Reed. There was a lot of comps to that. I think that's why people calmed down on that comp at this stage. But with Hooker and Wilson on the back end and Diggs and Bland, I think they'll be solid. I think they will be solid, but I think it also helped a lot having Micha Parsons there and not having him there anymore. I think it's going to be a brutal time. They might be at best a mid defense at this point. And again, you're talking about, 2 first-round picks from a team that barely ever picks out of the top 15. You have to hope for a lot to go wrong with Green Bay. I don't think we're there on that. I think LaFleur's too good of a coach. I think they have too good of a situation there at this moment in Green Bay. Let's move on. Let's talk about the other dark horse candidate of. I actually think the NFC East is a very tough division. I think it went back to being a very hardcore division this offseason because the Commanders, while I'm not a big fan of their defense, offensively finally got back Terry McLaurin. They agreed to a 3-year, I think it was $96 million deal. I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I think it came out to like 32 APY on paper, but that's not really what the numbers are. Really probably came out to more 29 APY with the real numbers on top of the extension. The guarantees, I was kind of right. If you look at the videos from prior, if we go back to the game tape, I said it was going to probably be between 40 and 50 million in guarantees that they were fighting over. It ended up being $44 million in guarantees. You're guaranteeing next year's part of the deal. If this is what they were fighting over this whole time, I'm just kind of like, I'm awestruck they couldn't get this done sooner. What does this mean? It means now they actually might have a chance to be, I think they might win this division. I think they went from being the team that I had some concerns about to the team that I think probably wins this division, especially after the Parsons trade. And if there's any issues, like they now become the second best to win this division. Let me put it that way. I also think that there is a concern that I have with this team, which is their defense sucks. Okay, it doesn't suck. It's not great, though. I don't think they did enough to fix their defense in the offseason. I was hoping for more big moves. All their big moves came on the offensive line. They traded for Deebo Samuel. Offensive side, I feel pretty good, right? And in fact, I like the Deebo Samuel addition. I like him more with Terry McLaurin in the room because you now have a guy who's taking the top off the defenses, and now you have the ability to sprinkle it down and get some run after the catch with Deebo Samuel, which is what Deebo Samuel does well. He's a good run after the catch guy. Having, Terry McLaurin there, having that marriage of skills, I think is very important for the Washington Commanders. So offensively, I feel really good about this team. Trading for Tunsil, adding Conley in the draft. Defensively, I don't like what they did. I don't like that they spent a lot of money on Kinlaw. I don't think he's that great of a player. They really overpaid for him. I can't believe they did that, and then they got rid of Jonathan Allen. I don't understand that whole situation. There must have been some kind of like locker room beef between him and Dan Quinn. So I have concerns with that situation, and that's maybe the one thing that's holding me back from thinking that this team is going to be able to outcompete the Eagles, able to maybe even outcompete the Giants, because that's also another team in this division who, their D-line, and I talked about it when I did the division episode, so I'm not going to go too deep into the Giants. When I did the Giants episode, I like their D-line. I think the Giants' D-line is the scariest part of that team. I like their defense. You look at the pass rushers there with Carter and Burns, and Carter looked legit against legit guys in the preseason. Dexter Lawrence, you have Adebo, you have Javon Holland. I think they have a lot of good pieces on that defense. Offensively, I think the Giants have more concerns. Offensive line-wise, I do like Mbo. I think he came out playing pretty well in the preseason against some pretty stiff competition. So they do have some depth now. Andrew Thomas, though, I have some concerns because it sounds like he's still having health issues, which is kind of a concern going into this offseason. Going into the season, because you have to start your week 1 game. And to be fair, yes, thank God it's the Commanders, and they're not necessarily the toughest defense in the world, but you have concerns there. You look at, on the right side, you get Illuminor. I think you keep him there at right tackle for the time being, unless you have to move him over to the left tackle. But I like some of this team. I don't know if they've had enough of a jump forward in John Michael Schmitz. I don't think they did enough as far as addressing interior offensive line this offseason. So the Giants, I like Russell Wilson. I like Malik Neighbors. I think Tyron Tracy has some explosiveness to him. I'm intrigued by how they're going to use Scattaboo. So I think the Giants are going to beat some tough competition and be able to eke out some wins in places we weren't expecting them to. And you look at the Commanders, I think the Commanders are offensively got some gas to them. Defensively, I think it's kind of like the opposite of the Giants. One team has a lot of defensive power, the other team has a lot of offensive power. They're kind of missing like the mitigator on the other side. And Dallas kind of also another one that has some offensive firepower. Defense I have some concerns about. Eagles are the only team that I feel like I do have concerns about the coordinator issues, but because again they lose Kellen Moore. Are they able to address that now going forward? This time around, did they hire somebody they really feel very comfortable with? I don't really know. But they are the team I feel the best about going into the season. And I think their receiver depth is kind of cool with Jahan Dotson, Mechie, Brown, and Devonta Smith. They still have Goddard there. They still have Saquon Barkley. So, if they have to throw it a bunch, they'll throw it a bunch. If they have to run it a bunch, they'll run it a bunch. Do we get clutch Jalen Hurts again? That's going to be the fun part of this. In the end, I think it breaks down to Eagles, Commanders, Giants, Dallas. I would love to pick the Giants higher, but I'm just not feeling a big fan of excitement for their tackle situation because, again, it sounds like Andrew Thomas is taking his time to get back. The interior of the offensive line I don't think was addressed enough. Commander situation, like their situation, they really threw a lot of darts at that offensive line. But again, Cosme, injured, starting out on PUP, I believe. So not a fully healthy offensive line. Connolly, we got to see some stuff from him. But they have a lot of good pieces there. They got rid of Brian Robinson. So it's Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, your time to shine. So I'm leaning with Commanders number 2 on that list. I'm going to go Giants number 3. Dallas, man, I have so many concerns now. Offensive line, defense, new coach. Show me. Show me I'm wrong, Dallas!
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous. About the past, about the future.